My parents tricked my son into handing over his entire college fund, $35,000 he'd busted his butt for years to save. They swore it was to save their home from foreclosure, a desperate plea that tugged at his heart. 2 weeks later, I found out they'd funneled $32,000 to my niece for a high-end camera and a first-class trip to Paris. My son's dreams, his endless weekends working his skipped prom, all crushed for her Instagram-perfect life. I didn't scream or lose it. I chose to fight back. And what happened next will make you question how far family can go to betray trust. Drop a comment if family's ever stabbed you in the back. And hit subscribe to hear how we took a stand. I'm Jennifer, 36, a single mom and real estate agent in Boise, Idaho. My son Ryan, 17, is a hard-working kid who dreamed of Boise State University. He's been fixing pipes since he was 15, saving every dollar for his college fund, $35,000 by his senior year. Growing up with my parents, Ronald and Patricia, wasn't a walk in the park. They had a clear favorite, my sister Michelle, 39, a sales clerk who lives for appearances. Her daughter Brittany, 18, a fashion-obsessed teen, could do no wrong in their eyes. My brother Kevin, 34, an electrician, mostly stayed out of the drama. I was the odd one out, always questioning, never fitting their mold. When I got pregnant with Ryan at 19 and married his dad Greg, my parents made it clear I'd thrown my life away. Michelle, on the other hand, played by their rules. She married Todd, a car salesman they adored, and settled into a flashy house 10 minutes from mom and dad. Brittany was their golden grandchild. Every dance recital, every Instagram post got their applause. Ryan, they'd send a card for his birthday. Maybe call on Christmas, but their hearts were with Brittany. It stung, but Ryan took it in stride. "It's fine, Mom," he'd say, his voice calm despite the slight. He's got a good head on his shoulders. At 12, he was mowing lawns. At 14, cleaning gutters. By 16, apprenticing with a plumber. Every paycheck went straight to his college fund, which I matched when I could from my commissions. "Boise State's my ticket out," he'd tell me, eyes bright with determination. It made me proud and broke my heart at once. By his senior year, Ryan had $35,000 saved. Not enough for 4 years at Boise State, but a solid start with scholarships. My life had stabilized, too. After years of night classes, I'd earned my real estate license, doubling my income. We moved to a decent 2-bedroom in a safe neighborhood, and I could finally buy Ryan new sneakers instead of thrift store finds. Michelle and Todd, meanwhile, kept climbing the social ladder. Bigger house, fancier cars, Brittany strutting in designer clothes. Family dinners were rough. Mom would gush over Brittany's latest photo shoot while asking Ryan half-hearted questions about school. "That's great," dear Patricia would say, barely listening, then pivot to Brittany's new modeling gig. Ryan stayed gracious, chatting with his grandparents like their distance didn't hurt. Despite the favoritism, Ryan kept a bond with Ronald and Patricia. He'd call weekly, help them set up their new smart TV, even mow their lawn when their gardener flaked. They seemed to appreciate him, or so I thought. As Ryan's senior year rolled on, acceptance letters poured in. Boise State, Idaho State, even University of Idaho with partial scholarships. The night he got his Boise State letter, we celebrated with pizza and soda, his grin lighting up our tiny kitchen. "We did it, Mom," he said, hugging me tight. All those early mornings, late nights, they were worth it. I looked at my son, so driven despite the odds, and felt we'd beaten the system. No help from my parents, just our grit. That spring was full of hope. Ryan's scholarship from Boise State covered half his tuition, but we'd still need loans. "I'll work part-time," he said over breakfast, crunching numbers on his phone. Always practical, always thinking ahead. I smiled, told him to focus on graduating. That evening, as Ryan was fixing a leaky faucet for extra cash, his phone rang. He answered, his face shifting from curious to worried. "Grandpa, slow down. What's wrong?" He stepped into the living room, voice low and urgent. 20 minutes later, he came back pale as a sheet. "Mom, Grandpa says they're losing the house. Some legal mess with the mortgage, they need $35,000 fast. My stomach dropped. Ronald had pulled stunts before, vague emergencies that always benefited them or Michelle. Have they mentioned this before? I asked, keeping my tone steady. Ryan shook his head. It's sudden. They got a lawyer's letter last week. They might be homeless, Mom. His voice cracked. He idolized his grandparents despite their flaws. Did they ask for your money? He hesitated, then nodded. Not directly, but Grandpa was crying, said they're desperate. I felt that familiar tightness, the kind that came with my parents' schemes. Ryan, that fund is for your future. We can look into loans for them. But Ryan was already set. I told Grandpa I'd help. It's their home, Mom. I can take loans for school, lots of kids do. He was 17, legally able to decide, and that money was his. I wanted to call Ronald and rip into him. What kind of man guilts a teenager out of his savings? But Ryan's eyes stopped me. So earnest, so trusting. If I pushed too hard, I'd risk driving a wedge between us. Let me talk to them first, I said, trying to buy time. They need it by tomorrow for the lawyer. Ryan replied, already pulling up his bank app. The urgency screamed red flag, but Ryan was moving fast. Before I could argue, he'd started the transfer. As he hit send, my heart sank. Years of his hard work gone in a click. I stared at my son, so proud of helping his grandparents, and prayed I was wrong about Ronald and Patricia. But deep down I had a bad feeling, one that said we were about to uncover something ugly. 2 weeks after Ryan sent his college fund to my parents, I was scrolling through Instagram during a lunch break when Brittany's post stopped me cold. There she was, posing with a sleek professional camera, the kind that costs $25,000, and a caption gushing about her dream gift from Grandma and Grandpa. Another photo showed plane tickets to Paris first class tagged with hashtags about her upcoming fashion shoot. $7,000 easy. $32,000 total, just shy of Ryan's $35,000 he'd handed over to save their house. My hands shook. This wasn't a coincidence. Ronald and Patricia hadn't mentioned any foreclosure since Ryan's transfer, and now their golden grandchild was flaunting gifts they'd supposedly planned for months. I called Michelle that afternoon, keeping my voice calm despite the rage bubbling inside. Hey, those gifts for Brittany, the camera, the Paris trip. Where'd Mom and Dad get the money? Michelle laughed, casual as ever. They've been saving for her graduation since last summer. Wanted to make it special for their star grandchild. My stomach twisted. Last summer, before any talk of losing their house. So no legal fees, no foreclosure, I pressed. Michelle paused, then brushed it off. Oh, that they sorted it out. You know how they are. Sorted it out with Ryan's college fund. The truth hit like a punch. They'd lied, planned it all, and Michelle knew enough to stay quiet. I didn't tell Ryan right away. I couldn't bear breaking his heart. That night, he came home from a plumbing job exhausted but still checking his Boise State portal for dorm assignments. Mom, I'm looking at community college options. I can transfer to Boise State later, he said, forcing optimism, his dreams shrinking to fit the betrayal I hadn't yet revealed. I sat him down, hands clasped, to stop their trembling. Ryan, there's something you need to know about the money you gave Grandpa and Grandma. His eyes searched mine, hopeful for good news. There was no foreclosure. They used your $35,000 to buy Brittany a camera and a trip to Paris. His face crumpled. Shock, then pain, then a quiet fury I'd never seen in my gentle son. They lied to me. All those shift-skipping proms, saving every dime for Brittany's vacation. He stood pacing our small living room, years of sacrifice unraveling in seconds. Grandpa was crying, Mom. Said they'd lose everything. I trusted them. His voice broke, not just anger but the sting of being played for a fool. I pulled him into a hug, his shoulders shaking. My own tears burned, but I held them back. We'll make this right, I promised, though I had no idea how. The next day, I ran into Michelle at the mall. She was shopping for Brittany's Paris wardrobe, bags piled high. "Hey, Jen," she called, all smiles, like she hadn't helped cover up a theft. I didn't waste time. I know Mom and Dad used Ryan's money for Brittany's gifts. You knew, and said nothing. Her smile faded. She shifted, clutching her bags. They said it was their money to spend. Ryan gave it freely. My jaw tightened. Freely, under a lie. They told him it was for their house. You let them manipulate a kid. Michelle's eyes darted away. Guilt, but no apology. Brittany deserved something special. Ryan can still go to college. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. Her words echoed my parents' favoritism, their casual dismissal of Ryan's worth. Back home, Ryan was quieter than usual, staring at his Boise State acceptance letter like it mocked him. I worked for that money. Every weekend, every summer. And they just gave it away, he whispered, his voice raw with betrayal. I suggested calling Ronald and Patricia, but he shook his head. He wasn't ready to hear their excuses. Instead, he texted his Uncle Kevin, who'd just moved back to Boise after years away. Kevin showed up that evening, lanky, quiet, still the same electrician who avoided family drama. Ryan spilled everything. The money, the lie, Brittany's gifts. Kevin's face hardened. He'd always been neutral, but this crossed a line. I've seen Mom and Dad pull stuff before, borrowing money from me for emergencies that turned into vacations, he said, his own history with their schemes surfacing. He pulled out his phone. He still had access to Patricia's old email from setting up their Wi-Fi. Let me check something. They're not great at covering tracks. By the next morning, Kevin had proof. Emails between Patricia and Michelle from last fall, discussing Brittany's perfect graduation surprise. One message from Patricia read, "We'll figure out the funds. Brittany needs this for her future." No mention of foreclosure, no hint of legal trouble, just a plan to spoil their favorite while Ryan scraped by. Kevin forwarded the emails to me, each word a nail in the coffin of my parents' lie. I showed Ryan. His jaw clenched, but his eyes were steady. They knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't care about me. That night, Ryan sat at our kitchen table, his usual spark gone, replaced by a heavy resolve. I want to confront them. Not over the phone, face to face, he said, his voice firm despite the hurt. I nodded. He deserved answers, even if they'd sting. We heard about a church fundraiser that weekend. Ronald and Patricia would be there, playing the perfect grandparents for their community. Ryan looked at me, a mix of fear and determination. I'm not letting them get away with this, Mom. They need to know I see through them. I squeezed his hand. My son was ready to fight, and I'd stand by him every step. But deep down, I braced for what we'd uncover at that church. Their lies ran deeper than I feared. That Sunday, we walked into the church fundraiser with our heads high but hearts pounding, Ryan, Kevin, and I ready to face Ronald and Patricia. The fellowship hall buzzed with Boise's tight-knit community, Pastor Michael greeting folks Mr. and Mrs. Thompson chatting over coffee, my parents playing perfect hosts in their pressed Sunday best. Brittany was there too, in a new dress that probably cost more than Ryan's monthly earnings, laughing with Michelle by the dessert table. Ryan's hands clenched. Seeing them act like nothing happened fueled his resolve. I squeezed his shoulder. We'd agreed he'd speak first, no backing down. As the crowd settled for announcements, Ryan stood, his voice steady despite the eyes on him. I need to say something about my grandparents, Ronald and Patricia Coleman. The room hushed. My parents froze, their smiles stiffening. 2 weeks ago, I gave them my college fund, $35,000 I worked years to save, because they said they'd lose their house without it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Pastor Michael's brow furrowed. Ryan kept going, his gaze locked on Ronald. But there was no foreclosure. They used my money to buy Brittany a $25,000 camera and a $7,000 trip to Paris. The silence was deafening. All eyes shifted to my parents. Brittany's jaw dropped. She turned to Michelle, who looked away, clutching her purse. Ronald cleared his throat, forcing a chuckle. Ryan, you're blowing this out of proportion. That money was a gift, And we chose to invest in Brittany's future. Patricia nodded, her voice syrupy. You've always been taken care of, dear. Brittany needed this opportunity more. My blood boiled. The same excuse they'd fed me my whole life. Ryan's voice sharpened. No trace of the kid who'd trusted them. A gift. You cried, Grandpa, said you'd be homeless. I skipped prom, worked weekends, for what, her Instagram photos. Pastor Michael raised a hand, his tone calm but firm. Ronald, Patricia, is this true, Mr. Thompson, a deacon who'd known them for decades, leaned forward, his wife's hand on his arm, her face shocked. Ronald's cheeks reddened. He blustered. We're teaching Ryan generosity. He was getting too focused on himself. Mrs. Thompson gasped. The crowd murmured, disbelief spreading. I couldn't stay silent. Generosity. You lied to a 17-year-old, stole his future for Brittany's vacation. Michelle jumped in, her voice shrill. It wasn't stealing. Ryan gave it freely. Brittany cut her off. Her face pale, hands trembling. Mom, stop. Did you know about this? Michelle hesitated. That pause said everything. They said it was their money. I didn't ask questions. Brittany's eyes widened. She turned to Ryan, her voice small. I didn't know it was yours. I swear. She stepped forward, holding out her phone. The camera's listing on a resale site flashed on the screen. I'm selling it. I can't keep it now. The crowd's murmurs grew. Pastor Michael looked floored. Michelle grabbed Brittany's arm. You don't need to do that. Brittany pulled away. For the first time, I saw a kid caught in her parents' mess, not just a spoiled teen. Ryan wasn't done. He faced his grandparents, his voice low but cutting. You told me it was for your house. You knew I'd believe you. What did I ever do to deserve this? Patricia's eyes darted to the crowd, her perfect image crumbling. We made a tough call for the family. Brittany's going places, Ryan can work his way up. My heart sank. They genuinely believed Ryan's dreams mattered less. Kevin, who'd been quiet, spoke up, his voice steady, holding up his phone. I found emails. You planned Brittany's gifts last fall, no foreclosure mentioned. You targeted Ryan's savings. The crowd gasped. Mr. Thompson shook his head, muttering about trust. Ronald's face twisted. He stood pointing at Kevin. You're stirring up trouble. This is a family matter. Pastor Michael intervened. A family matter that's hurt a young man's future. You owe him an explanation. Patricia smoothed her skirt, her voice cold. Ryan's being selfish. Family sacrifices for each other. I stepped forward, my voice shaking with years of their favoritism. Sacrifice. What have you given up? Ryan worked for every dollar. You took it knowing what it meant to him. Brittany's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Ryan, then her grandparents. You told me it was your savings. Why would you lie? The room felt like it was closing in. My parents' lies exposed their community watching. Ryan took a deep breath, his voice steady again. I believed in you. Thought family meant trust. You broke that. He turned to me, his eyes clear despite the pain. Let's go, Mom. I got my answer. We walked out. Kevin behind us, the crowd's whispers following. Brittany's voice called after us. Ryan, I'm sorry. I glanced back. She stood alone, Michelle glaring at my parents. Ronald and Patricia sat frozen, their reputation in tatters. In the car, Ryan stared out the window, his silence heavier than his words in the church. They don't even see what they did wrong. They think Brittany deserves my money more, he said, his voice hollow. I gripped the steering wheel. Their cruelty cut deeper than I'd expected. Kevin leaned forward. You stood up to them, Ryan. That took guts. Ryan nodded, a flicker of resolve returning. It's not over. I want my future back. I knew then we'd fight, not just for the money, but for Ryan's dignity. The morning after the church fundraiser, I called Lisa Bennett, a sharp lawyer Kevin recommended who specialized in fraud cases. Ryan sat across from me at our kitchen table, his eyes tired but determined, still reeling from Ronald and Patricia's cold dismissal. Lisa listened as we laid out everything. The fake foreclosure story, Ryan's $35,000, Brittany's $32,000 gifts, Kevin's damning emails. This is textbook fraud. They knowingly misled Ryan to get his money, she said, her voice confident but measured. We'll start with a demand letter. $35,000 plus 10% interest due in 10 days. Or we file a lawsuit. Ryan nodded, his jaw tight, ready to fight for his future. Lisa drafted the letter that afternoon. Every word backed by evidence, bank transfer records, screenshots of Brittany's Instagram posts, Patricia's emails planning the gifts months before. We signed it, Ryan's hand steady despite the weight of confronting his grandparents. The letter was delivered by courier the next day. I imagined Patricia's face when she opened it, her perfect composure cracking. By evening, my phone lit up. Mom's number. Jennifer, how dare you threaten us with legal action, after all we've done for you and Ryan, she hissed, her voice a mix of indignation and panic. I kept calm. Years of their manipulation had taught me not to bite. You lied about losing your house, used Ryan's college fund for Brittany's camera and Paris trip. That's fraud, Mom. She switched tactics, her tone softening, almost pleading. Ryan gave us that money freely. We never said it was for legal fees. I gripped the phone, their lies piling higher. We have your emails, Mom. You planned Brittany's gifts last fall. Return the money, or we go to court. Silence. Then a sharp, "You're tearing this family apart." She hung up. No apology, no accountability. Ryan overheard. His face hardened. They're not sorry. They're just mad they got caught, he said, his voice low, the last of his trust in them gone. Michelle called next, her voice frantic, accusing me of ruining Brittany's graduation. You're blowing this out of proportion. Mom and Dad were helping Brittany, she yelled, her loyalty to our parents blinding her. Helping Brittany by stealing from Ryan, your own nephew, I shot back. My patience gone. Michelle paused, then admitted, I knew they were giving her the gifts. Didn't know it was Ryan's money. That half-truth stung. She'd stayed silent to protect her daughter's spotlight. Ryan's family, too. Why didn't you speak up, I asked. Her silence was answer enough. While we waited for my parents' response, I started talking to their community. Not to gossip, but to tell the truth. At the grocery store, Mrs. Thompson pulled me aside, her face grim after the church scene. Is it true about Ryan's college fund, she asked. Her voice low. I nodded. They lied to him, used his savings for Brittany's gifts. Her eyes widened. She promised to talk to Pastor Michael. Word spread fast. Neighbors, church members, even Ronald's golf buddies began whispering. Their perfect image, built over decades, was unraveling. Ryan wasn't sitting idle. He took to social media, something he'd never done before. He posted on Instagram a simple photo of his Boise State acceptance letter captioned, "Worked years for this. My grandparents took my $35,000 college fund for my cousin's camera and Paris trip. They lied about losing their house. I'm fighting for my future. Please share." The post exploded. Friends, classmates, even strangers shared it, comments flooding with support. That's messed up. You got this, wrote his friend Kelly. Others called out my parents' betrayal. The pressure was mounting. Ronald and Patricia couldn't hide anymore. Brittany showed up at our apartment a few days later, unannounced, clutching her backpack, looking less like the Instagram star and more like a scared teen. Can I talk to Ryan? She asked, her voice shaky. I glanced at Ryan. He nodded, so I stepped into my bedroom, leaving the door cracked. Brittany's voice was low. I sold the camera, got $20,000 back, and canceled the Paris trip. I didn't know it was your money. Ryan's response was quiet. Would it have mattered if you knew? Brittany hesitated. I hope so. I'm not that person. She sounded genuine, caught in a web she didn't weave. Before leaving, she hugged Ryan. Awkward, but real. I'm sorry. For everything. Michelle's attitude shifted too. Not out of guilt, but fear. Her job at the mall depended on her reputation. Customers were talking, some even avoiding her. She called me, her voice strained. Mom and Dad need to fix this, it's hurting my sales. I almost laughed. Her concern was for herself, not Ryan. Tell them to pay him back. Or it gets worse, I said. No sympathy left. Michelle must have leaned on them because 2 days before the deadline, Lisa called. Your parents want to negotiate. They're offering $20,000 payable over 3 years with a non-disclosure agreement. Ryan shook his head, his eyes fierce. No way. I want all of it. $35,000 plus interest. No gag order. Lisa smiled. Good call. Their offer shows they're scared. She prepared to file the lawsuit. Papers ready to serve if they didn't budge. I kept sharing the truth, quietly, to the right people. Pastor Michael called. I've known Ronald and Patricia for years. This isn't the first time they've bent the truth. He offered to mediate, but only if they admitted fault. Their silence told me they wouldn't. On the 9th day, Michelle showed up. Her face drawn no trace of her usual polish. Mom and Dad are selling their RV. They'll pay the full amount, $38,500, including interest. I raised an eyebrow. Why the change? She sighed. Brittany's working part-time now, refuses to let them buy her stuff. And my boss warned me, the drama's bad for business. I nodded. Their hand was forced not by remorse but by consequences. Lisa confirmed the deal. A cashier's check would arrive tomorrow, no strings attached. When Lisa called to say the check cleared, $38,500 in Ryan's account. He sat quietly staring at his phone. It doesn't feel like a win, he said, his voice heavy. I put my arm around him. It's not about winning, it's about standing up for what's right. He nodded, a small smile breaking through. I'm thinking about what to do with the money, not just for me. I looked at my son, his strength shining despite the scars, and knew he was planning something bigger than himself. That evening, Ryan sat me down at our kitchen table, his Boise State acceptance letter spread out beside a notebook filled with scribbled plans. The $38,500 was back in his account. A hard-won victory after Ronald and Patricia's betrayal, but he wasn't ready to just move on. Mom, I want to use $5,000 to start a scholarship for local kids like me, so no one else gets manipulated out of their dreams, he said, his voice steady, eyes bright with purpose. My heart swelled. My son, barely 17, was turning his pain into something bigger than himself. I hugged him tight. I'm so proud of you, Ryan. Let's make it happen. We worked with his high school counselor to set up the fund, named the Boise Future Scholarship, aimed at students working side hustles to pay for college. Ryan wrote the mission statement himself. No one should lose their future to family pressure or lies. The first award went to his friend Kelly, a barista saving for nursing school, who cried when Ryan handed her the check. Word spread fast. Local news covered it, calling Ryan a teen hero. He shrugged off the praise. It's not about me. It's about making sure others get a fair shot. His humility made me prouder than any headline. With the remaining $33,500, Ryan confirmed his spot at Boise State. Set to start in the fall, majoring in business with plans to focus on financial literacy. I want to teach people how to protect their money, especially from family, he told me one night, his voice carrying a wisdom no kid should have to earn. The betrayal had scarred him. He'd check his bank app daily, half expecting the money to vanish again. It's hard to trust now, he admitted, his eyes distant, the sting of Ronald and Patricia's lies lingering. I squeezed his hand. You don't have to trust them. You've got us, and that's enough. Cutting off my parents wasn't easy, even after everything. They sent no apology, just a curt note with the check claiming they paid to keep the peace. Through Michelle, I heard they were spinning a new story, telling friends we'd extorted them, painting Ryan as ungrateful. Their denial didn't surprise me. They'd always rewritten reality to suit themselves. Their social circle shrank. Pastor Michael distanced himself. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson stopped inviting them to dinners. The community saw through their facade. Ronald and Patricia's perfect image built over decades was gone. Michelle showed up a few weeks later, uncharacteristically subdued, no designer bags in sight. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice softer than I'd ever heard. Ryan was at a plumbing job, so we sat in our living room, tension thick between us. Mom and Dad had to sell their RV to pay Ryan back. "They're blaming you," she started. But her tone wasn't accusatory. "I used to think they were just helping Brittany. Now I see how they played us all." Her eyes met mine, raw, unguarded. They pitted us against each other, always picking favorites, dangling money like a leash. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said. A crack in the wall we'd built since childhood. She told me Brittany had changed too, working part-time at a clothing store, saving for her own camera. She refused their offer to replace the Paris trip. Said it felt wrong, Michelle added, a hint of pride in her voice. Brittany had texted Ryan to apologize again. They'd met for coffee, a tentative step toward rebuilding trust. "She's not a bad kid. Just caught up in their game," Ryan told me later. His forgiveness generous but guarded. Michelle admitted her own fault. "I should have asked where the money came from. I let Brittany's spotlight blind me." I nodded. No words needed. For the first time, I saw my sister as a person, flawed but trying. Kevin became our rock, deciding to stay in Boise instead of moving back to Portland. He'd started a small electrical business, hired Ryan for weekend jobs, teaching him the trade. "Kid's got a good head. He'll go far," Kevin told me, his quiet support meaning more than he knew. He helped Ryan with scholarship paperwork, even drove him to Boise State for orientation. Their bond grew, a reminder that family isn't just blood but who shows up when it counts. Kevin's own distance from our parents deepened. "I'm done with their games," he said, his voice final. As summer turned to fall, we packed Ryan's dorm essentials, bedding a mini fridge, his acceptance letter framed by Kelly as a gift. He stood in our apartment, the place we'd fought so hard to keep, and looked around thoughtful. "I'm ready, not just for college but for whatever's next," he said, his smile small but real. I hugged him, my heart full and breaking at once. "You're stronger than I ever was. You taught me how to stand up," I told him, his example shaping me as much as I'd shaped him. On the drive to Boise State, Ryan was quiet, then spoke, his voice clear. "This whole mess, it showed me what family really means. It's not about who's related. It's who respects your dreams, who fights for you." He looked at me. "You and Kevin. You're my family, Mom." My throat tightened. I nodded, unable to speak. It wasn't the fairy tale ending I'd once hoped for. No tearful reunion with Ronald and Patricia, no sudden remorse from them. But it was better. Ryan's clarity about his worth. His right to be valued. 3 months into his freshman year, Ryan called. Excitement in his voice. "I had lunch with Brittany. She drove up to visit," he said. Casual, but hopeful. "She's paying her own way now. Even stood up to Michelle about Grandma's meddling." I smiled. The ripple effect of Ryan's stand was shifting our family. Michelle had set boundaries, too, refusing my parents' offers to fund Brittany's college, insisting she work for it. "It's weird. We're actually talking now," Ryan added. A cautious optimism I hadn't heard in months. Ryan's thriving at Boise State, running the scholarship fund, acing his classes, planning to counsel teens on financial independence. "I want to help kids spot manipulation, set boundaries early," he told me, his purpose rooted in his pain. Ronald and Patricia carry on, their lives smaller, their influence faded. Michelle says they rarely mention us, as if erasing Ryan and me lets them dodge their guilt. It doesn't matter. We're building something stronger without them. This journey taught us that love doesn't mean tolerating betrayal. Sometimes it means walking away, choosing yourself. Ryan's stand didn't just save his future. It showed me my own strength, showed Brittany and Michelle a mirror. If you're facing family who dim your dreams, who exploit your trust or demand your sacrifice, know this: you deserve better. True family lifts you up, never tears you down. Have you ever had to draw a line with loved ones to protect your heart or your future? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters. If Ryan's courage moved you, like and share this video. Let's spread the truth that standing up isn't selfish, it's essential. Thank you for hearing our story. May you find the strength to claim your worth just like Ryan.